Once upon a time, in my 20s, I saw myself as a capitalist. A very, very broad term that could be simplified as defending the hegemonic economic system, largely influenced by the United States. It was all so obvious. The numbers and history didn't lie. All the countries that embrace free markets have been growing at a sustainable pace. And not only that, as soon as the Berlin Wall fell, the countries of Eastern Europe sunk in poverty and authoritarianism under the sphere of Soviet communism, ran toward capitalism, and in less than 3 decades, boom! Countries like Poland, Hungary, or the Czech Republic went from hunger and scarcity to prosperity and freedom. And other countries that embraced socialism, like Cuba or Venezuela, the story speaks for itself. Today, in my 30s, approaching my 40s, my outlook on life has changed significantly. After so much research, internalizing concepts, and becoming suspicious of any simple explanation of life. Now I question whether the system really works for everyone's well-being. And no, with this, I don't want to convince you to stop believing in the free market, much less defend socialism. I'm just here to give you a new perspective on the system, something I can sum up with the well-worn but accurate phrase: not everything that glitters is gold. How will I do this? 1. From the perspective of economics through the 4 mutations of capitalism, according to the author Thomas Piketty. 2. From philosophy and anthropology, I'll tell you about the dangers and risks of this system. Are you interested? Then stay until the end of the video. The person you see on screen is Thomas Piketty, a French economist who specializes in economic inequality and wealth distribution. From a very young age, he developed an academic career, including a period when he lived in the United States, the cradle of modern capitalism. This is when he became disappointed with the dominant approach in economics. Being very observant, Piketty began to notice too much abstract theory about the American economic system that had little connection with real data. Formó a su tesis. Thus, he devoted himself to researching historical data from multiple countries to determine long-term patterns that helped him formulate his thesis. Since neither I nor many of those watching me are economists, we will try to simplify his thesis with a simple phrase. When the return on capital is greater than economic growth, an increasing amount of wealth becomes concentrated in an ever smaller elite.
Yes, Sebas's map. What is the return on capital?
The money generated with financial instruments and also from company profits, real estate rentals, stocks, dividends, bonds, interest, and so on. In other words, all the money that comes from owning previous wealth, not from actual work, meaning not from the production of specific goods and services.
Because just like your crypto bro who lives without working and only from speculation, big firms do it too, just on a much bigger scale. Big firms do it too, just on a whole different level.
Because of all this, in his works Capital in the 21st Century and Capital and Ideology, Piketty describes certain mutations of capitalism throughout history that can be summarized as follows. First phase, industrial capitalism, which began in the 19th century with the Second Industrial Revolution. Thanks to combustion engines and the widespread use of electricity and oil, mass production was created. Consumer goods were standardized, and the use of machinery in industry became popular. In the 21st century, it became a system, a capitalist system as we know it today. Already during the mid-20th century, there was talk of the second phase as consumer capitalism or productive capitalism. That is, the era of our grandparents and parents, the baby boomers, those who experienced the good times and the golden age of capitalism. In this era, the economic system created real wealth and opportunities for ordinary people were evident. The entrepreneurs of that time could invent a product, set up a factory, and make money by selling what they produced. That is, the entrepreneur's wealth grew alongside the growth of the real economy and jobs. Third mutation, financial capitalism starting in the 1980s. That is, when I was born. In 1989, we were entering. The use of financial instruments became widespread. So companies started making money not only by selling products or services, but also by carrying out financial operations. Buying and selling stocks, bonds, currency speculation, all on a massive scale. The new goal of large corporations is no longer to improve products and services, but to generate as much money as possible. No longer through work, but through things this abstract. They don't generate real wealth, but only pad their bank balances, without developing any real service or production. What a life! Example of impact. During the 2023 fiscal year, Apple spent $77.55 billion on buying back its own shares, a financial operation that artificially influenced the value for shareholders. This triples the $29.92 billion it invested in R&D, and it's more than 6 times its spending on productive infrastructure, generating an indirect 4% profit for its shareholders and executives. And just like Apple, all the big corporations do the same. And by doing it so much and following Piketty's logic, we are entering a fourth mutation of capitalism: monopoly capitalism. Empresas de cada sector. After decades of accumulating financial capital, a few investment firms like BlackRock buy a significant percentage of the shares of the main companies in each sector. That is, little by little, the mega corporations are absorbing the competition. Things that happen right under our noses, but that we don't stop to analyze. Disney buying Pixar, Fox, Lucasfilm, and Marvel, Facebook buying Instagram and WhatsApp, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street buying most of the shares of Apple, Microsoft, and Google in technology, the shares of Pfizer, Johnson, and Moderna in pharmaceuticals, and those of JP Morgan, Bank of America, and Citigroup in banking, as well as a large part of the shares of Coca-Cola and Pepsi in beverages. Speaking of this, according to a study by Harvard University, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street control 25% of the voting rights of the top 500 companies in the S&P 500. When the same owners have so much influence in Coca-Cola and Pepsi, there is no real price war or real competition, but rather coordinated management to maximize profits. The big losers are ordinary people like you and me, and we depend on what the powerful decide.
This map, monopolies also bring good things. Thanks to them, innovation, development, and technology are encouraged, and therefore progress.
I'll give you a point on that, but I'll refute it not from an economic perspective, but from a philosophical one. All right? During the 1990s, Microsoft came to control more than 90% of the PC market. Thanks to this, it dominated operating systems for decades, achieving massive software standardization and the global expansion of personal computers. Thanks to this fact, we all have access to a personal laptop today. However, Microsoft was accused of monopolistic practices for destroying the competition and blocking rival browsers. Some people believe that this monopoly slowed down innovation on the internet by not allowing competitors to develop.
Come on. Many minds and ideas may have been silenced, but we'll never know.
With this, I'm telling you that monopolies don't necessarily foster innovation. They could do it. Yes, but what if it was counterproductive by neutralizing the competition, which maybe had less capital but better ideas? Who knows? So now it's time to quote a maxim from the British politician and historian Lord Acton, overused but backed by psychology and sociology.
Power tends to corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolute.
Power is synonymous with money. If you accumulate too much money, you have the power to buy an entire political class to protect your interests. You can do it by leaving traces like Odebrecht and end up in jail, or if you're smarter, do it so discreetly that mortals like you and me will never find out.
I bet that the vast majority of billionaires are smarter than Marcelo Odebrecht.
Or they could also keep multiplying their income in a legal and transparent way, something that, believe me, doesn't benefit you or me. The concentration of power/money in such a tiny elite, something like the richest 1%, owning more wealth than 95% of the world's population, is a consequence of the system we live in, and not because it had to be that way. It could have been different, and the elites could have been more aware and not increased the inequality gap to such ridiculous levels. But they didn't do it. They're not doing it, and they won't do it because Lord Acton was right. The consequences of everything I've told you today are right under our noses. As Piketty said, We've reached a stage where the money you earn from things like rents or stocks grows faster than the money generated through real work. Capital has gotten out of hand. The price of such essential things as housing, healthcare, or food. Think about it. Our grandparents who lived in the golden age of consumer capitalism could buy a house at 24 without a college degree and have up to 8 children. And that's why I have 8,000 uncles and cousins today. You work yourself to death studying a degree, languages, master's degrees, diplomas, just to get a job that pays 1,000 to 1,800 euros a month. Without external help, and since rent costs you half your salary, you will never ever be able to save up for the down payment on your first apartment. Just as Piketty says, we've gone from entre las cifras son claras. We've gone from a society of owners, where with hard work, you could buy a house, to a society of heirs, where you can't make it unless your parents did back in their day. The numbers are clear. In Europe, 60% of total wealth comes from inheritances, while in the 70s, it was only 35%. Therefore, hard work is no longer enough if you don't have something backing you up. Final thought. It's not about whether you're a capitalist or a socialist. It's about understanding that a system that prioritizes inheritance over effort is not a system of freedom, but a caste system. Is capitalism a good system? It could have been. I won't deny it, but it hasn't been due to human nature, which tends to become corrupt. The Enlightenment thinker Jean-Jacques Rousseau said something in the 18th century that sounds more relevant than ever.
The equality of wealth means that no citizen is so wealthy that they can buy another, and none so poor that they have the need to sell themselves.
Well, today we have the first. Citizens so rich that they can buy governments. And the second, poor people who accept any precarious job just to survive. Rousseau was not anti-capitalist, but he understood that freedom without equality of opportunity is not freedom. But now, tell me, what is your perception of capitalism? Do you have any idea if we can reform it for a fairer society? Don't forget to comment, and see you next time.